Hello everyone, I just wanted to check in and give you some answers to some of the questions you had on my first video on the Crazy Quilt bracelets and necklaces. And thank you for the feedback and the views. It's awesome. I was really surprised at how many people looked at the video and stuff. So one of the first things is the music. Some people had issues with the music. So thank you for the feedback. I won't plan on talking with music in the background anymore. I'll just do it in my introduction. As far as the closed captioning, it's not something I have any control over. When I'm on my YouTube channel station, I can't change it. It's just not an easy thing I could change or fix. It's something I have to learn how to do. They say you can do it manually, but I don't have time to do it manually. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. But it's something I'm going to investigate and look into. And any of you have a suggestion on how I could do it easily with just a switch, that's great. I use iMovie, so that's where we're at. I hope that my videos, whether you can understand what I'm saying or whether you can hear me or there's music on, I hope visually you can understand what I'm trying to say. I'm one of those people that I learn by looking and watching, not so much reading and all the other. I get it if you have issues with your hearing and stuff, and my apologies. But anyway, I'm going to get to the really important questions, which are quite a few of them. One was, what are the measurements? What are the size of these things? So here is the pendant. It looks like it's about 2 inches by 3 inches. Here is a bracelet. Again, it's about 1.5 inches, and I'm assuming it's probably going to be about, I want to say, 5 or 6 inches. We're looking at about 5 inches. Consider what, this overlap too is going to take up a little bit of room. Now, if you are using a cuff, you can get these in very many different sizes. This is 1.25 inches, which I normally use. So this cuff here is 1.5 inches, but it was probably started out as maybe 1.25 inches. They make, this is 1.5 inches cuff. You can get them at 2 inches. You can get them at an inch. These are really easy to find. I go a lot of my supplies on Etsy.com. So I would just put in brass cuff blanks, and you're going to get a ton of places to buy them. They probably even have them on Amazon. So that's that. I'm going to show you how to make a cuff today, because that was another question you guys asked, is how do you do it on a cuff? As far as the magnetic clasp with the strapping, antelopebeads.com. They have different sizes, great place to get beads, all kinds of leather, and magnetic clasps. So that's the place to get the magnetic clasps. As far as the foundation I'm using, it's Lacey's Stiff Stuff. And I don't really use this stuff. I don't use the Lacey Stiff Stuff, but it came in handy for this project. But Google it. A ton of places sell it. Amazon sells it. Lacey's Stiff Stuff is what you could use in a foundation. Also, you could use felt. Felt is thick enough that it would hold that. Okay. So I talked about that. The other question was Lily Pilly's. I mentioned Lily Pilly's design. And that's where I got some of the funky patterned ultra suede. So that was another link for you. Whenever you're looking for something, Google it. It's there. All you have to do is take a little time to search for it. All right. Now, how do I do the cuff? All right, here's my cuff. It's 1.25 inches. And what I do when I do cuffs is I always cut out a little piece of cardboard that's straight. And that's what I use kind of is what my leather, my ultra suede should be. So, and this is 1.25 inches, so it's a little bit bigger. It's going to be 1 7/8 inches because you want your foundation or your leather, your backing, to be a little bit wider than the cuff itself so that you can stitch the edging. So that's what I used as my graph or my little thing. I have a piece of black ultra suede here that I just traced that out. Now it looks a little shorter because we are putting this on the inside of the cuff. This leather. We're not putting it on the outside. The outside is going to be longer. So if you are, just to keep that in mind, if you're making a cuff and you're putting the leather on the outside, the ultra suede, it's going to be a little bit longer. So there's 2 measurements to this. But anyway, this is going on the inside. So I also have a center line here, and I marked a center line on my cuff. So I'm just taking those measurements, and then since we are flipping this leather over, I went ahead and added 1/4 of an inch on either side of this, okay? And then what I did is I took my little crazy quilt piece, I put it there, and then I cut. You can see there's a little slit on either side on that. So that's the part that's going to fold over, and then we'll talk about this when I get there. So I find the easiest way to do it, once again, super thick tacky glue is what I use. Now they don't sell it in the jar anymore, but you can get it, you know, in just this form. And if you like, you could put it in a jelly jar if you want. I just like it this way because it's easier for me to get my toothpick in there, and then it's easier for me to spread the glue. So I'm just going to put that tacky glue on the inside of this metal cuff. And like I said, these are easy to find. You can get them just about anywhere. I'm sure Amazon even has them. Okay. And then I am going to take this and just fold it in half and just put it down in the middle as best as I can. And that's why I have this middle line here, because that's going to really help me to figure out where the center is, because you want to keep it as center. And you have these lines on the side, so you know that gives you some help. You can move. That's what's nice about this glue, is you can move it where you need it to be, because you just keep it as centered as you can in that equal line all the way around, just like that. So it's on the inside. You can see it's on the inside of the cuff. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my crazy quilt piece, oops, and put the glue on the inside, on the back of the crazy quilt piece. And I'm going to glue that hopefully in the middle. I should have marked that line too, huh? But I'm just going to visually go, that's about right. I do have the little cuts made, so I'm going to go ahead and get that as centered as I can, because I do have the lines on either side. And I'm going to just use some clothespins at this point, and I'm just going to anchor this in place. Looks like, yeah. And I'm going to let that glue dry just a little bit, because it's going to be easier for me with the glue dry, or at least because it's so then it won't be sliding all over the place. So I'm going to let this glue dry for a minute. Okay, so I let the glue dry, but I'm going to still keep it anchored on this side. And so what I'm doing is I'm just taking my tacky glue, and I did, as I said, I cut a little slit here on both sides. That's kind of where the crazy quilt, your beadwork and crazy quilt end. And I'm just going to go ahead and add some tacky glue just on this seam that's sticking out. It's hard to hold it with the clothespin, so I'm removing them because they're just kind of in my way. If it were, I should really be letting this glue dry a little bit more, but I want to get this video done. And so I'm just going to go ahead and wing it here. Now you don't want to get too sloppy with the glue, like I showed in my first video I did with this, because you know it has a tendency to get all over the place. But you do want it to hold. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to just take this and kind of just fold it over. It kind of just pops over in place. If you get glue on the suede, it's not a big deal. It can easily be cleaned off. So that's kind of what it's doing. It's just flipping over onto your beadwork, just like in the first video I did. Now, if you've done a real long one, it might be harder to flip it over. You can easily put a slit in this, and it'll flip over easier that way, and you'll never really even be able to see it, okay? So if you have a hard time flipping it over, just cut, I would probably cut them in the same place, maybe like every couple of inches or something, or just in the middle, maybe. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep Adding more glue here. All the way along this edge. And then I'm just flipping this over. Like I said, it kind of just flips into place. Now this cuff is a little bit narrower than the original ones that I did. As you can see, it's a little bit smaller because this was a wider cuff. This one's smaller. And I'm just made it smaller just because I wanted to get this done. Because I didn't want to, I didn't want it to take forever. So I just did a quick little crazy quilt thing there. Okay, so now what? Okay, so now we have this edge around here that we're going to trim. Now, that's one of the reasons that I like to have my little graph, because what I normally do is I cut this the size I want it before I glue it on, because it's a lot easier to cut. I need to put my glasses on. I should have been doing this with glasses on all along. It's easier to cut the suede before you glue it onto the cuff. I'm not so worried about trimming it around the bottom here, but it is easier to trim than once it's glued on the metal cuff. It's really hard to trim. So that's why I kind of like to have this graph or this thing so that I can use it to measure my suede and then cut it and then glue it on. But in this case, we're doing something a little bit different here. I can't really cut it beforehand. I probably could cut these ends beforehand, but it's just the end, so it's not too difficult to do. But I'm just giving it maybe, I don't know, it's probably about 1/8 of an inch, and maybe even smaller, probably more like 3 millimeters I'm leaving around the edge, because I want to have enough edging, enough suede edging that I can stitch to, because I'm going to go around, because we're going to go around and we're going to edge this, right? You're probably wondering, how do we do this part on the end here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this piece of suede. This should be long enough. No, probably not. Maybe not. I'm going to cut it in half here. Cut this in half. And this is going to get just glued on either end. I'm going to just take some glue. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put the glue on the cuff. It's going to be easier for me to do it that way. And then I'll just put a little bit up here. And then I'm going to just take that. I'll just wait. I have the white marker on there, but it's not a big deal because it comes off with water. So I'm not too concerned about that. And then I'm just going to put this right in place, get it where I want it. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing with the other side. I was putting the tacky glue on this way, but I think it's going to be easier and cleaner if I just do it this way. And a little bit of glue there, and then I'm just going to flip this over and get it where I want it. Okay, so now we have our suede there, and now what we're going to do is we're just going to take our scissors. I like my Jim Holtz scissors. They're the best for bead work and for just trim work. They're really, really good scissors. And I'm just going to trim the excess suede off. And I'm using the suede that we trimmed earlier as my guide, so I know where to trim it. So I have my, it's all nice and trimmed. Probably do a little bit cleaner job here. And now we'll turn around and trim the other side. Like I said, I'm using the suede that I trimmed earlier as my guide as to where to trim this. And you probably can't see what I'm doing, and that's probably impossible for me to try and get that angle on my camera. But there we have it. So now all we have to do is, I'll clean this off, is all we have to do is edge it, just like we did when we were doing this cuff. We're just going to edge it all the way around with the simple edging. So I go all the way down. Now, if you wanted to add some edging or some, beads along the top, I would recommend doing it before you glue it on, but I'm not going to probably edge that. I'm just going to edge it all the way around the whole piece. So it'll look like this all the way around. So that is how you do the cuff. I just wanted to share that with you guys because I wanted to do it in the original video, but I also try to keep my videos to just an hour, and that would have taken me some extra time. But I do want to show you something. This is a mushroom. It's a beaded mushroom. I teach a class called the Beaded Object class, and we just finished it. And it was about the same time that I was coming up with this crazy quilt idea. So I decided to do a crazy quilt mushroom. So as you can see, the top part is all crazy quilt. And there's a special technique I do to get the skin for the mushrooms and stuff. You have to take the class if you want to learn how to do that. But I do want to do more videos. I do want to do more teaching on, in these YouTube videos. So if you guys have any suggestions of what you want to see me do, just let me know. Give me a holler. And I appreciate the feedback because I want to make these, easy and fun for everybody. Okay. Thanks so much for joining me. And I hope this really helped answer all your questions. And if you have more, please put them in the feed. All right. All right. Have a great one. Bye.